Wait, did you say UGG masks?
I really want UGG to make a mask. How nice would that be? Like, imagine like dark fuzzy. That's what my mom says. But like, okay, picture the like fuzzy part of an UGG on the like on your rims,
just on the rim,
all around. So like the part that goes up your nose that always irritates your nose would be the UGG material, and then the inside could be like the nice like the soft leather or whatever, and the outside could be the UGG with a little sign on the front. Someone needs to make it. I keep checking the UGG online store. They don't make them. It's really annoying.
That's weird. I don't know why they did it. It can have like a bow too. Like, you know, the bow.
Well, let's go and say a prayer. Let's start with class. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Saint Faustina. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. This is Oxford. Yeah, they're real bones. Not human bones.
Okay, that's not good.
No, I got those myself. I was at a dried up pond and I found them. I think they're, I don't know, I think they're dog bones. Like or cow, like dog or cow, it's hard to tell. Like a baby cow. It's hard to tell, but it's one of the two. Probably cow. All right.
Oh my God. I thought it was you have some like drinks in here? It was not last night. Yeah. Might have to like display it because otherwise
Okay, we'll go back to the movie later. There's a lot I want to get done before the finals. So I want to at least do some on chapter 5 first. And then if we have time, we'll come back to the movie before finals. If not, we'll do that after finals. But I just want to make sure we get to something before so we can have a test on Wednesday next week. I wanted to do the movie yesterday, but then we got sidetracked and didn't get a chance to finish it. So we'll come back to it. Let's see. So we're going to go to chapter 5. It's about bones and the skeletal system. I think we're on a new chapter. I don't think you had any notes from chapter 5. I don't remember doing anything in chapter 5 yet. Could you pull us the blinds back there, Patrick? Or Carl, when you get a chance? Thank you. It's easier to see. No, you don't need to do that for the final exam. Keep it. We'll watch the movie after we get through this chapter, but it won't be on your final or on the test next week either. Do you need to have the blinds up a little bit more? Could you open the blinds just a little bit?
That's really dark in here.
All right, so there are a lot of functions of bone. Bones, one thing they do is attach muscles. And that's why bones have curves or sharp points to them. And it's places where muscles attach to the bone. So you can only move when muscles attach to bone and muscles pull on the bone. And you can see, right, it shows you right here, like your vertebrae, for example, have a lot of hooks that pull on muscles and keep them in place. An injury, sometimes you can pull off the muscle, you can tear the muscle away from the bone. In your back, it's common to separate muscle from bone when you cough. It's very painful, but if you strain your muscle, you can tear it to the point where it pulls off from the bone. Or you can have the muscle pull the bone off too and break the bone. So those are two common injuries with bones and muscles. Bones also protect and support soft tissues. So you have bones around organs that are really vulnerable to injury. Your skull is one of the best examples of that. Your skull encases your brain, one of the most important organ in your body. Then your vertebrae on the back encase what? What does your vertebrae hold? Spinal cord, exactly. Which, if that is injured, you can be paralyzed, you can die. Your spinal cord controls movements throughout your body and other functions. And so if somebody breaks their back, say around their waist, then they can be paralyzed from the waist down. If they break their back up in their middle back region, they're paralyzed from the middle part of the body downward. So wherever the break is in the spinal cord is where they'd be paralyzed. And you can also, if you break up into your neck, well, that controls your breathing as well. And so that can be fatal in that situation. So that's why it's important that's encased in bone, because it's such an important part of your body. And it's so vulnerable to injury too, because it's like threads, it's very easy to tear nerves.
So if it's only a partial tear, could you heal your spinal cord?
It's possible. I mean, it's not very easy to repair nerves. Most of the time when nerves damage, they're gone, that's it. To a small extent, they can be regenerated and grown back, but it's not common. And so you do have, usually through surgery, you have a better chance of repairing nerves. Without surgery, you don't. But with surgery, you can have some chance of a partial regrowing of the nervous tissue. So it just depends, but it's very hard to, and usually not a great chance of having it repaired. But if it's a full severing, that's usually, you can reattach it. Sometimes you get partial regrowth, but if it's partial tear, it's a better chance of it coming back. Also, you have blood producing cells in the bones. So you have your bone marrow, the red bone marrow makes new blood cells. And that's called hematopoiesis. Hemato means blood. Poiesis means generating. Hematopoiesis is the process of making new blood cells, both white and red blood cells. And we think usually of bone marrow being in the middle part of the bone, and there is bone marrow in the middle part, but the vast majority of the bone marrow that makes blood in adults is at the ends, in this area and this area. And the middle part usually is just storing fat and not the red bone marrow.
Wait, fat is stored inside the bone?
Yeah, your bones are mostly in the middle part are full of fat.
So if you lose weight, do you lose
You lose a little bit of it. Now, they're full of fat, but it's not the primary place where you store fat, if that makes sense. Think about how big your bones are compared to the rest of your body. You can't store a ton of fat in your bones. So the majority of fat you store would be in your skin or below your skin, around your organs and your muscles. So as you lose weight, the majority of it would be lost below your skin by your muscles and not so much in your bones, but you would definitely lose fat in your bones too as you lose weight.
Wait, this might be a weird question, but if you gain a crazy amount of weight, would your bones almost burst or break?
No, your bones have a way to get bigger or smaller.
Oh, okay.
So now it's of course a limit on how big they can get, but your bones can grow with you, which would include things like if you're more active, you get bigger bones. So with more activity, your bones get larger and stronger. Your diet can also affect your bone size. So to a certain extent, you can change how big your bones are. But for the most part, though, as you gain weight, most of this can be outside your bones. See, the fat mostly be stored outside. If it's full of fat, then the fat will just come out and be put in your skin and around your organs. So not usually so much inside your bones. But you can see this picture in the bottom that shows you how it looks. I mean, that white stuff is just fat. The bone itself, you can see, I guess it's pretty easy to see here, but that's this right here on the edge, and all of this would be fat in the middle, and then the red bone marrow near the ends. But yeah, I mean, if you gain weight, the fat will, you're gonna have more fat out and not more fat in your bone. The way you get bones to be bigger generally would be with more activity. So, or if you're growing when you're a kid. But as an adult, if you're not growing, you can increase your bone size by being more active. And you probably have all had this experience, or you see somebody had this experience, where if you break a bone, you don't use it for a while, it gets smaller. And you can see even after a few weeks without using that, if you break your arm, for example, and you have your arm in a cast, after a few weeks, when you take your cast off, you can see a noticeable difference between your diameter of your left and your right arm. Just on that little bit of time, without using that arm, it's going to decrease in bone mass. So the best way to make your bones stay strong and healthy is to continue to stay active. If you don't stay active, your bones atrophy very fast and they start to disintegrate. Your bones store minerals. And so calcium and phosphorus are the building blocks of bone. So if you don't have calcium in your diet or phosphorus, then your bones get brittle and more prone to injury. So it's important to stay, especially calcium, but also vitamin D, because vitamin D lets you absorb calcium. So calcium is useless without vitamin D as well. Another function of bones is to form a passageway for blood vessels to go through, along with nerves. The top picture shows you this, that you have this network of nerves and blood vessels that move through the bone. So there's different parts of the bone. You have the hard rocky area, which is the minerals, which is not living, but then you have the living part of the bone too, which the cells are encased in, and you have blood and nerves coursing through the bones. And so the network up here, you can see it goes through the hard area of the bone.
Are there actually large veins or arteries in the bones, like as large as the diagram shows? Or
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, in the middle part of the bone, they're the biggest of the arteries and veins. But yeah, you have smaller ones as you get nearer to the edge.
When you break a bone, why is it that sometimes when it heals, it forms more bone and it's really uneven, it doesn't heal the right way?
Yeah, so that can happen for a few different reasons, but generally at first is what happens, where the bone as it heals, it kind of makes this curve where if it breaks, you can get a bulge where the break is. And that's just naturally what happens as it heals. But over time, that bulge should be pulled down and flattened out with the rest of the bone. So normally what happens is with enough time, you're going to get a flat area where the break was. But you can have scar tissue buildup where the scarring just makes it have a bulge there. Or you can just have the bone not set properly. If your bone was broken at an angle and it's not pulled back, then you can have that bulge permanently there and it can just heal that way. So if you're not careful as it heals, if you don't wear the cast properly, or it's not set properly, then you can have that bulge permanently. Or you can have, again, scarring, which happens too, where you just have scar tissue buildup. So those are usually the two reasons why you'd have a bump after it heals. But normally, heals properly, you should not have any kind of bump. It should just be smooth afterwards. So bones are different shapes for different functions. The two main parts of bones, you can see in the top picture, you have compact bone around the edge. And so you can see it's very dense. And then spongy bone in the middle. And it looks like a sponge, although it's also very hard. And the bones I want to show you later, you can feel that, and it feels the same as bone. It's not soft at all. It's just called spongy because it looks like a sponge. So compact bone is dense and smooth. Spongy bone, you can see it's made of a lot of little crevices, thread-like, needle-like bone. And that's used to give the bones a little bit lighter weight to them.
How are birds' bones different
Yeah, they just have more hollow spaces in their bones. So yeah, birds just have a lot more, they have less compact bone, a lot more spongy bone or just holes within their bones to make them lightweight.
Did they break for you?
Yeah, they would. Yeah, because if you have less bone, then yeah, it's more prone to being broken. In this picture, in the bottom picture, you can see that spongy bone is near the ends, and then compact bone is along the sides and down the middle of the bone. And so it's easier to break, say this area right here than to break this area. This is your femur, your thigh bone. And common area to break it would be right here. That's where your hip attaches to the femur. So when people say they break their hip, what they mean is that they've broken this part right here, which is attaching to the hip bone. And so that's the first part to wear away as you get older, because that's made of spongy bone. And so that's the common injury sites when people who are older with osteoporosis would be the areas where there's mostly spongy bone. But it'd be very hard to break the middle part of your femur. That's just, it's very thick and it can break, but it takes a lot of force to do that. So there's different bone sizes and shapes. So one kind of bone is long bone. When we think of bone, we think of that, like your femur, your long bones on your arms, your radius ulna, tibia, your shin bone. Those are all long bones. You can have small long bones though, like your fingers are also long bones. So it's not really the length itself, it's the shape that would make it long or short. So long bones would be things that look like a cylinder. Short bones would be more like a square shape. So you find short bones in your wrists and your ankles. Those are the bones that you can see the bottom picture looks like circles or squares. Your kneecap is also a short bone. It's called a sesamoid bone. And sesamoid bones just form between tendons. So these are bones that, again, you find them in your kneecap would be one example of that, where it's surrounded by tendons. So your kneecap floats. It's not attached to any other bone. The tendons keep it in place.
So is most of the body long bones?
Well, I mean, I guess the size, yes. Now, number, no. By number, you have a lot more different kinds of long bones, but by size, yes, you'd say that long bones make up the bulk of the volume of your skeletal structure. Does everybody have these down? Then next kind is flat bones. These would be your ribs and parts of your skull. So your skull, even though it seems like one bone, is made of lots of bones. About 26 bones make up your skull. Now they're fused together, and so it seems like it's one bone, but it's considered to be several bones put together. Then irregular bones would be like your vertebrae, which you can see. Well, this picture right here looks like like a bat or a butterfly. That's found inside your skull. That's behind your nose. That's called the sphenoid bone. But your vertebrae kind of look like that too. I mean, they kind of like horns and hooks on them. And then the flat bone you can see in the picture, that's part of your skull. The parietal bone is basically this part, the side of your head. So looking at the bone, there's several things you can say about the locations and the areas of the bone, but you can talk about it in terms of epiphysis, which would be the ends of the bone, and diaphysis, which would be the shaft of the bone. So diaphysis would be from here to here, just the shaft, the long part of the bone. Epiphysis would be the end, each end of the bone. Epiphyses is plural, epiphysis is singular. So an epiphysis is expanded portion on the ends of bone that articulates with another bone. So to articulate means to touch another bone and forms a joint. And generally you see on the ends of the bone, this white glassy substance called hyaline cartilage. And that allows joints to move with no friction. So articular cartilage on the ends is a layer of hyaline cartilage in between the joints. The bottom part of the bone, you can see it right here on these ends of the hyaline cartilage. And also it'll be found up here too, which isn't shown in the picture. But anywhere at the ends of the bones where they touch other bones, you're going to see hyaline cartilage. And the diaphysis, as I mentioned before, is the shaft of the bone. It's just basically the long portion of the bone. You have a thin tissue that covers the bone called the periosteum. Even though it's thin, it's very tough. It's a vascular covering, which means it's full of blood vessels. It encases the bone, and it has bone cells that make the bone grow smaller or larger based on the circumstance. So you can have a bone bruise where that top layer is damaged. And so if you just have the periosteum damaged where there's blood vessels, that's bruising. Bruising is when you destroy blood vessels, you have bleeding below your skin. And so a bone bruise would be that part being damaged. If you have a break or a fracture in your bone, then you've gone on to below the periosteum into the compact bone area. And you can see in the picture right here, the yellow marrow, the fat part, it surrounds the blood vessels. It insulates the blood vessels, but they're in the middle around the fat. And the blood vessels come out of the bone. You can see that there's openings for them to come out. Everybody have these down? So this shows your femur, which is the hardest bone to break. It's the thickest, longest bone in your body. The other bones would be, also difficult to break too, but they're a lot thinner. The middle part of the bone, the hollow area is called the medullary cavity. So it's a hollow chamber, which encases the bone marrow and blood vessels. So the periosteum on the outside would be the thin layer that surrounds the bone. And then you have below the periosteum, the endosteum. So the endosteum, you can see, is just really all of the rest that's inside the periosteum. It's all of the bone. So this out layer right here, periosteum, the white part, and then the endosteum would be all the bone part below that.
Wait, Miss Holly, does hair and have something to do with being on the outside? Because wasn't
It
the
can.
guardian that was the outside?
So peri can mean close to or around. And so that's usually what that refers to. If you see peri as in PERI, that generally means close to or around
Okay.
something. And so periosteum, which means kind of like encasing. Like it moves, it's around. And endo means in. And that's refers to in these cases. So usually peri in medicine would refer to a membrane that surrounds or encases something.
Yeah, okay.
Does everybody have these down? And you can see on a spongy bone, you have blood vessels that kind of just intertwine throughout it. And so there's actually spaces for vessels to be in the spongy bone area. Compact bone, it's harder, but I'll show the next page what that looks like. But they need to be smaller vessels in the compact bone. So that's why you have red bone marrow mostly stored in spongy bone, because there's more spaces for blood to come in and to come out. So with the bone marrow transplant, they would have to go into the bone and to pierce the spongy bone area to pull out the blood. And on the next page, it shows you that right here. Usually they go into the top part of the femur by the hip and pierce that area and pull out the bone marrow.
Is it a vacuum?
It's not, it's a syringe. And so basically it's just, you know,
So
like
they don't have to actually scrape it out.
they don't scrape it out, no. Mm-mm. Yeah, they just, when they pierce it, there's enough fluid in there that they can just pull out the fluid. So it's a pretty painful procedure. They do numb that area, but there's only so much they can do to keep you from feeling pain. And so it is very painful, even though they do use lidocaine on that area. You still feel a lot of pressure as it moves into the bone. It's a last resort for certain kinds of cancer, autoimmune diseases. So marrow is a type of soft connective tissue that fills in the medullary cavity. And its primary purpose is to make more bone cell or more blood cells, red and white blood cells along with platelets.
How do doctors practice for those rarely used procedures?
Well, they do have mannequins and they have cadavers of, of dead people. So those are the primary things they would do. And then after that, residency, where they just get training on the job. They go out and they do these procedures, and yeah, it's going to be, at first, it's going to be a learning experience. But over time, they get better as they do more procedures, but they're supervised. And so that prevents some errors as they're being trained. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, they have enough, like robots and things like that, or they can use either dead animals or dead people who have done the bioscience. They can have enough training before they get to a real person that's very safe. But there's always a risk, and doctors definitely do make mistakes. Let's see. So we have that down. Osteocytes are the actual bone cells that are the living part of the bone. They look kind of like stars on here. They're the yellow parts. They're up here. This is not start here. So the blue is the nucleus, and the yellow part is the cell body. So the majority of the bone is made of minerals, which are not living, like rocks. The living part of the bone is the osteocyte, which is, you can see on here, is a star-shaped area, which is not the majority of the bone mass. So osteocytes live in lacuna, these little hollow areas around the minerals. Lacunae is a plural of lacuna. Lacunae form circles called lamella around central canals. So you can see, the bottom picture shows this better. You can see that you have these central canals, these blood vessels go lengthwise through the body or through the bone. And you have lacunae, these little dots right here that encircle around the central canal. So the bone cells get their nutrients from the central canals, but they can also exchange nutrients between each other through smaller channels. So the top picture shows that you have bone cells right here, these little canals in between them called canaliculi. That's the plural. Canaliculus is singular. But these are small canals that exchange nutrients between bone cells. And the matrix that surrounds the cells, what we think of as the bone, it's made of minerals like calcium and phosphorus, which makes it hard, and also some collagen, which does make it tough, but also kind of spongy and elastic in certain places. So bones can bend somewhat before breaking. And when you're younger, it's a lot more bendable than as you get older. So really young babies, it's hard for them to break bones. I mean, they can, but it requires a lot of force for that to happen because babies' bones are very spongy. They're very flexible. You can get green stick fractures when you're young. Okay, have you ever had like, like a piece of wood that's green and you try to break it and it just bends and doesn't break? That's kind of what they mean by green stick fractures, where you have your bone is just so rubbery, it bends, but it's not broken. And so it's very painful, but the bone doesn't break. So we have those down? So as you get older, if you lose the minerals, then the bones get more brittle. And so you can't gain bone mass as you get older to a certain extent. You only build up bone to about age 25 to 30. And after that, as you get older, you can only lose bone. You can't gain any more at that point. And so it's important as you're young to make sure you have calcium and vitamin D so you can build up enough bone. It's called retirement savings. It's kind of like you retire at age 25 or 30. Whatever money you have saved up is all you can use. And you can't gain any more. You can only lose the money. You can't, it's whatever you have for your life at that point. So it looks like for the mask rule that they're now going to have demerits with every infraction of the mask.
What is it?
So it looks like that for now, it won't even be a warning without having a mask on. It's just straight demerits every time.
What about like getting a drink of water? Like, what if you're
Yeah,
getting a drink of water
I
and
know.
you have your mask on, and then you like, so I'm like getting a
Right.
drink, and then I put this down, and then the teacher looks over. And then
Yeah.
like,
I know, you'd hope that that would be, allowed. I mean, you have to drink water.
Power trip.
I don't think people are power hungry. They just don't want the school to shut down.
Yeah, I think that's more of the rule. I mean, like, I just think it's where it's coming from is they're just afraid of it being transmitted and shutting down the school.
What do they want people to do for the whole jacket thing?
I don't know.
Like, they walk into the building, like, as soon as they walk
Yeah.
into the building, they're headed to Like, they don't even
I
get into
know.
their classroom.
Apparently you're supposed
Yeah.
to
And you
keep
have to wear a jacket outside because it's cold.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you're gonna get sick.
I know. I don't
And then
know.
you walk in with like a hoodie on that you're in the middle of taking off and your hands are there, like
Yeah.
walking in the door.
I just felt that's reports crazy. It's
I
like,
don't know.
yeah, anyways, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that needs to be clarified because I don't know what you're supposed to do about that.
Like, I honestly think the rules should be enforced, but I think that there should be communication and like clarity and not
Yeah,
just like,
not just a merit.
exactly, not all of a sudden just slamming down with the merits.
What
Like,
are our precedents, so?
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
not
students
against
and then they go home
demerits.
and
But you can
Hands
go
it
talk
to
to the
Mary. I'm like, oh, what did you do?
I
Right.
guess it was
She
just
must
happy.
have done something
Like,
bad.
it's like,
I she didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I feel like I wouldn't have
Schedule a meeting with them all. I don't know.
But it definitely should be clarified.
I mean, do you think that would do any good if I would talk to?
Worth a try. I mean, you can't hurt anything.
Or like, I know teachers have like teacher meetings a lot about like new rules that are gonna be like enforced,
Yeah.
but I feel like they should just like announce that to the school, like, oh, we got a meeting.
Yeah, because
here's
they're like,
what's gonna
oh,
be
by the way, we
enforced.
have to.
Yeah.
And like, you're good about that, Natalia. You're like the only one who actually communicates with us.
I try.
But like,
I mean, I
feel
think
like
that's
if
fair.
every
You know something, you just tell us on your phone.
And I feel
Yeah.
like if all the teachers did that, it would just be so easy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think you should know, I mean, what the rules are. I mean, it's just hard to know what the rules are if they're always changing. It's hard to know what to do if they're not consistent from day to day.
We're also very consistent about like regulating them.
Yeah, they're
So
so
not
consistent.
consistent.
Like, new rules all the time, but they're enforced for 2 weeks and that's it.
They're like enforced for 2 days. And then
Yeah.
they're enforced for 2 weeks and then they're reinforced for 3 weeks.
And then, so central canals go vertically through the bone. Then you have horizontal ones that are called perforating canals or Volkmann's canals, which connect between central canals. This makes an H shape. You see, you have central canals which go down, Volkmann canals which go across. So the osteocytes, the bone cells, just make a ring around the blood vessels, and they get nourished that way. So the blood vessels give off nutrients and water to the bone cells. They absorb them through the channels, and the bone cells that are further away get nutrients through canaliculi, these bone canals that connect between the bone cells.
So is this chapter pretty much all just about bones?
Yes.
Like, okay.
Yeah, so the first part is just about like, the microscopic level of the bones and how, the bone cells look and, different fibers that make it up. And then it's gonna move on to the bone names and where they're located in the body.
Oh, this is the chapter with the bone names.
But that'll be in January. We won't get to that
Oh, so
before the
okay. I
final.
was like, so
So-
we're supposed to memorize the
Yeah,
chapter?
no, before the final, it'd just be microscopic, like mostly
Oh,
just
okay.
this stuff. I mean, we're gonna have labs on Friday and Monday. So, and then we'll
So
review
the
after
test's
that.
gonna be, like, really short.
So it's gonna be a pretty short test. I mean, this is almost all the tests. It's pretty much everything we've
Are
done
we gonna
today.
have 2 tests over this chapter?
Yes, yeah, because they're gonna do one after the break, over, because chapter 5 is pretty long.
Okay.
We can't get through the whole thing before the final. And there's a lot of bones to know, 206 bones, So,
We
you know.
have to know all of them.
pretty much, yeah. It's not as bad as it sounds like though, because like you have, the phalanges, are your fingers, there's 5 of them, it's first phalange, second phalange, third phalange. I mean, so you have things like that, where you
A lot
just,
of repetition.
or like first metacarpal, second metacarpal, I mean, which would be the bones below your phalanges, which would be make up your palm. So, you have things that repeat, and that's 10 repetitions, right? I mean, you have 10 fingers, so. And then your feet, you have your tarsals, metatarsals, and the phalanges. So kind of it's the same. You have carpals, metacarpals, then your feet, you have carpals, tarsals, metatarsals. So you have very similar names too in different places.
Okay.
So it's a lot, but it's not as bad as it sounds like. The hardest part really is the skull. I think that, knowing the skull bones, I think is the hardest part. Osteocytes don't gather around the central canal in spongy bone. So you can see in spongy bone near the end, you don't have the circular osteocytes, as you can see right here. So they're kind of scattered throughout the spongy bone. And that area is called a trabeculae. So osteocytes in spongy bone are within a trabeculae, which is the region, little hollows that they are in. And nerves intertwine through there too, and that's why you have bone pain, because you do have nerves throughout the bone as well. Should we have those down? Probably get as far as page 144, it looks like, before the final. So we're almost already there. Okay, so just to review really fast what we learned today. Haversian canal or central canal. You know, so it's hard because there's more than one name to this. But haversian canal is a central canal, and it's the one that is found vertically through here. It's a long bone vessel or blood vessel that goes to the bone. What about Volkmann's canal? The other ones, right, horizontal ones. So central canal is the lengthwise, Volkmann's canal is the horizontal ones that connect. So you'd see them, you know, right here, right here. Osteocyte,
It's the bone cell.
bone cells, right? So they have little dots, right? And little like spiders or bugs, and there's little things right here. So all these little specks are osteocytes. Spongy bone,
Branchy
The
stuff.
branch.
right? So it's all this right here along the edge, looks like needles or branches. And then compact bone,
The rest of the.
you know, just basically the rest. It's the part that looks smooth. Perforating fibers, also called Sharpie's fibers. This secures the periosteum to the bone. This periosteum, you can see it's that transparent membrane that surrounds the bone. And the fibers connect the periosteum to the endosteum, to the actual bone. And this gives you a better picture of how the blood vessels move through the bone. You can see the blood vessels have those hollow areas that they go through in the bone. So if you break a bone, one way you can tell if you've broken it, you know, lots of swelling, also a lot of bruising, because bruising means bleeding, and you have blood vessels that will be broken when you break the bone. Generally, you do get a lot of bruising with a broken bone because of that. Okay, on this slide, so I'm just going through a few things again we learned today. This membrane right here, what's that called? Periosteum. And then how about this right here, this whole thing? Like the vessels going through it. Yeah, Volkmann's canal, central canal. Up here, it's just the bone, the blood vessels, the bones. What about this one right here?
Oh, that's the one or something.
Actually, I'm sorry, you know what? Haversian canal, I mixed those up. This is a haversian canal right here. This is Volkmann's. Usually I call this central and perforating. I don't usually call it by the names, but the book does. So yeah, so this is haversian, Volkmann's. Oh, now we entered, well, with 1 minute to go. Oh, that's probably, oh, Andres. I was looking at, I thought it was Antonio, because he was supposed to be in. All right,
So the one where they do the shopping, everyone should live early.
yeah, that's funny.
Maybe included on
Okay, so we'll end here for today. For homework tonight, do questions 1 through 6. On page 136 and then 138, questions 1 through 6 for homework.
Okay, so aversions is the central.
Exactly, yeah, and Volkmann's is the, yeah, horizontal, yeah.
What is it? Oh.